The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now,
Here's Bill Simmons.
All right, the special Sloan Conference Series, the BS Report. First person we're having on here, the founder, co-founder of the Sloan Conference, Daryl Morey, general manager, Houston Rockets. How are you?
Good, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for doing this right before the trade deadline. I'm sure this isn't stressful at all for you.
Yeah, it usually comes after.
Yeah.
At least we got 2 weeks this time, but I've been juggling calls while we're doing the panels.
Right. Are you amazed that this conference has gotten this big?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as you know firsthand, because you were here early days. I mean, it started pretty humble and keeps growing. I think, obviously using analytics is something that's shown really helps teams get better, and we're sort of riding that wave.
I feel like it's not cool anymore because everybody knows about it. It's
Yeah,
almost
it's like
cool to
when-
have a backlash to it now.
It's like when Metallica had the Black Album.
Yeah.
Now everyone's like, it's a problem. So.
Everybody knows about analytics now.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me
you made
is-
it too popular, Bill.
Yeah, I think it was you. The interesting thing to me now is that people are really trying to recreate what happened with baseball with every other sport to varying degrees of success. And basketball, I think, is something where, you're in pretty early in that.
Basketball, I think, will always be the most interesting because baseball is almost becoming all science to where you could argue it might be less interesting for the fans, where I think basketball will always be, a mix of art and science in terms of using the numbers and using watching and your intuition. I always talk about what goes in one jump shot. We're not going to break that into one. Is it because the guy worked for 1,000 hours on his shot? Is it bad defense? Is it a good pass? Is it? There's like 100 things. It was a good pick set. There's 100 things that go in one jump shot being made with all the interaction that we'll never isolate with numbers. So it's always going to be a mix of both.
Right. And I don't know. I'm torn. I compared it once to Lost, the TV show Lost. You have Jack's side and you have Locke's side. And they're just these two corners. And with basketball, I love the stats. I think they're really interesting. But you cannot assess basketball based on stats. There's just too much that goes into it. And it kind of belies what basketball is about to some degree. The way you use it is for individual plays almost more than anything. Is this guy good at this? Can he make corner threes? What happens to our defense when he's out there?
We really use it for everything to a different degree. So on some decisions, like back when we could draft high schoolers, you just look, he's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's got wide shoulders, let's get Dwight Howard.
Right.
But you're not going to use his high school stats. To the other side of a 2-for-1 is really a scientific thing now. If you're not doing it, you're making a mistake.
Right.
Two bad shots are better than one good one, no matter who's doing it.
That's one of your causes in life.
Yeah.
You text me sometimes during Clippers games when Chris Paul has 30 seconds on the clock and somehow gets a shot in
Chris
2 seconds.
is, I think, one of the best in the league.
It's almost like basketball porn for you.
Yeah, Darren was good. Exactly. We are like Lost, though, where it is like a perfect yin and yang,
Yeah.
And it's absolutely that, with each decision we make, we say, how much can we use the historical data and the analysis to help inform our decision? On some, it's going to be very little. On some, it's going to be a lot, and we sort of judge.
I like the things that I've enjoyed the last couple of years because now we can really break down stats for actual plays. I was reading about Pekovic. Is it Pekovic or Pekovic? I always call him Peck.
Yeah, I can't
seems
pretend to know
whatever.
Eastern European pronunciation.
So he's awesome on high screens, and there's stats to back it up. It's 71% of the time, when they run it correctly, he does this.
It's not just the screen. He might be with this roller. And
Right,
he
that's what it was.
hard
When he rolls to the heart of the
opens-
basket, 71% of the time they score. There was some stat like that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then conversely, I read, I think Prudy actually for us was writing about Kemba Walker. When he uses the high screens, they score only 19% of the time. It's All right. Well, now you're telling me that he can't use high screens. Like, that's pretty good data.
That's where you made that point. It's where it's getting very interesting. Is you break down the action of the basketball game off curls, off screens, off floppy. How are each of those players going to be at post-ups, post-up defense? How are they good at each one? And then really the translation of that from the numbers to getting to the coaching staff down to the player level. I mean, and then onto the floor. That's really the challenge we have.
And then, watching the Clippers all season go to the games, they have a shot open in either corner basically at all times because of Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, because defense shifts so much to them. And just randomly, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but they get Caron Butler. And the story with how they got Caron Butler, I guess, was that they asked Chris Paul, even before they traded him, which sounded a little fishy to me, but they were like, if you could rank the small forwards, who would you pick? And he said Caron Butler. Now, as it turns out, when you watch the team, Caron Butler in the corner, he's got a really quick release, and he makes it a lot of the times, and he's actually the perfect guy for the team. They easily could have found somebody who would have missed that shot every time, and it really would have screwed up the offense.
Quite a few guys to miss shots.
Right.
So you can get them.
So how often do you find, as a GM now, GMs are just pigeonholing, I need this. This is I need from my three, I need somebody who makes this specific shot right here.
Yeah, I think Popovich might be the best in the league at that, along with R.C. Buford, and finding guys who do exactly the role they want. And we had a guy, Shane Battier, he's like the coach's robot, meaning like he knew exactly the game plan and how to implement it. And I think, that's sort of the interesting thing about our sport. You take, Barry Bonds, and he's going to create 10 to 15 wins for this team, but you throw him in that outfield, it'll be 10 to 15 wins. But you take a player like you mentioned, Caron Butler or others, and they exactly fit your style and structure, you can create advantage not just in I have better players, but also my system fits my players better, which is really, really interesting.
Is it fair to say it seems like the smart teams now, and I would consider Houston a smart team, since somehow you're in the playoffs every year, even though I don't think you've even drafted in the top 10. Have you? Top 12?
We've been above 500. We've been in the playoffs in the East every year, but we've been challenged.
Oh, that's right. You've been over 500 every year, at least.
Yes. So we're trying to reform a championship contender, which we thought we were with Yao, Tracy, Ron that year.
Right.
With losing our superstars and not going below and staying a winning program. It's actually, frankly, never been done, but it's definitely possible, and we've gotten close with.
You've had horrible luck. Which makes sense
tough.
because you grew up a Cleveland fan. You somehow transferred the Cleveland karma to the Rockets.
It's interesting that people don't realize the scar that comes with being.
Well, the Tracy thing, they were two of the best 9 players in the league at one point, and both of them went down.
Yeah, and as we formed, I thought, a great supporting cast with Shane and Ron and Aaron Brooks and Carl Landry and Scola.
Yeah.
Right as that formed, they obviously got hurt and weren't the same player. So we've been now with all those great players trying to sort of reform that.
So I trailed off on my original question, which was with the way the cap works and the tax works. It seems like the smart teams, like you and Dallas and San Antonio and maybe the Celtics. Hopefully, maybe not. I don't know.
Not according to your column.
Well,
apparently.
I thought I'd throw them in for sign of goodwill. You build around 3 guys. You pick 3 guys, and then you build the team around, or maybe 2 guys, 2 or 3. Oklahoma City is another one. They have their guys. They know who the guys are. And now it's like, all right, what do we put with these guys? What exactly do we need? Is that fair to say that's what's happening?
I think that's the strongest model.
Yeah.
I try not to be very prescriptive of, like, you have to do it this way or that way, because I think sports always surprises. But there's a lot of secondary positives of having that structure that no one talks about, because you have 3 guys making most of your salary who are your top guys. You almost have to take bets on younger players. You have to take bets on. So part of the whole Jeremy Lin story, which I was being talked about here, is they have opportunity because they have Tyson, they have Amari, and they have Carmelo. They literally have to continue to take bets on players when things don't work. And
they had a low roster too.
Yeah,
they only had would they have 7 guys at one point? Like in
well, they had injured
August?
guys. They had injured guys, and most of their guys were lower salary guys who they were trying out, and early on things didn't try out, and then obviously they found Jeremy Lin came in and fit perfectly to talk about fit and system and style. He came into the sort of the perfect system for him on offense.
Can we just say out of fairness that had the Pau Gasol transaction happened, Jeremy Lin would have been your backup point guard?
I don't know if I can talk about that with being electroshocked, you know. So I'll say that
It was a 4 for what you were giving up 3 players,
yeah, it was Powell, Skoll, and Dragic,
including your backup point guard.
Who's very good, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then at that point, Jeremy Lin and Johnny Flynn would have competed for the backup point guard job.
That's yes. You said
So then
it.
Jeremy Lin, you waive because you have too many guaranteed contracts. The Knicks
Yes,
pick him up.
and we need a center.
He becomes a national phenomenon. And you've been hearing about Jeremy Lin for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. I honestly, it's one of the best stories the NBA's had in a long time, and it's really interesting for me in terms of we constantly bring in very good players, like
Right.
Jeremy Lin being one of them, and this year Chandler Parsons surprised us, and Chase Budinger, and Aaron Brooks, and Carl. We bring in those guys and do a pretty good job at finding them. We don't necessarily know always which ones are going to pan out, but we thought Jeremy had a lot of talent. But at the time, we had Kyle Lowry, who I'll take as my point guard in any war. Dragic, who's one of the best
You
backups.
have 3 guaranteed guys,
And then
all making at least
Flynn
$3.5 million,
making
right?
more than $3.5 million. So
Yeah.
it obviously the opportunity. You know, right now, if we could have kept him, he would have been the guy sort of waiting for his opportunity, waiting for an injury. And the sports world will be different right now.
Here's how I think you should handle this. When people bring this up to you, you'd be like, look, only 2 teams took a chance on him. Where were the other 28? I was at least trying to make it work with him. And then we had to cut him with too many contracts, and then the Knicks took a flyer. But why don't the other 27 teams who didn't put in a claim for him take crap?
Yeah,
I think that should be your game plan from now on.
Obviously, this is the Geeks Conference, so
Right.
it shows the media generally will focus, and even people will focus on what we call type 1 error. You take an action, and it fails. So we took an action, and we brought him in. That was the right move. We took an action of waiving him. That was the wrong move. We had good reasons, but that was the wrong move. What they don't talk about is all the people who could have signed him, but didn't, and he wasn't drafted. He could have been signed easily. Golden State should get the most credit for finding Jeremy Lin. They gave him his first 2-year
Right.
contract, and they really should get the kudos for really believing in Jeremy.
Are you sure you made the wrong move by waiving Lin? I mean, it didn't seem like you had a choice. You had 3 point guards who all had guaranteed contracts.
I think if we knew to the degree of how good he
Then you
could
make
be,
a move, yeah.
Yeah, we would happily eat salary and things like that. It's not pretty much no team ever does it in training camp, especially.
Well, and also you had no training camp.
We had a few days to look at
Yeah,
it.
you had
basically,
3
yeah.
days and you had a new coach.
Well, I still remember talking to him when I had to call him because I was remote when we waived him, and it was when we were signing Dallenberg, and we literally had no place. We had to waive somebody right before we cut down to 15 people, and I called him. I was like, hey, you're a great player. You're going to do great. And I think he thought he was going to have to play in Europe or China or the D-League. He had no idea.
I remember I emailed you the night before and I said, whatever you do, don't waive Jeremy Lin. He's going to come back to haunt you.
You know,
Remember
there's
that?
been a lot of people who have
said
thought
that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a long line. I was telling one of the media guys, this long line. You know, now there's all the articles on how they helped Jeremy Lin improve. That line keeps forming and getting longer.
Well, can we talk about the statistical?
Larry Riley and I are the only two in the we made a mistake line.
Right. Well, the statistical thing, there's been a lot of revisionist history about, well, look at his comps. And there was one blog post somebody wrote a couple years ago, and people are pointing to that now. And the bottom line is he was a shooting guard at Harvard. He doesn't shoot nearly as well back then as he does now. I don't think there was any way for anybody to know, just based on the evidence we had, that this guy would develop into an above-average point guard.
He's one of the great stories. And, yeah, those guys who switch positions are very hard to forecast, whether you're using traditional or analysis. And I think the other thing that's not talked about is there are about 20 players who play the level of competition of Jeremy Lin who look just as good as Jeremy Lin every year in the draft.
But John Shire is a great example, right?
John Shire was a very good player. He was actually on our Vipers minor league team for a while. So there's all those, and our job is to use our eyes and to sift through those. And our scouting staff and myself and others on our staff all did a great job identifying. So did Golden State. So did Dallas, who brought him in, saying of those 20 guys a year who look amazing against, not the ACC, not top competition, which ones should we bring in? Brought him in, and obviously, but predicting these heights. People say I say no one's predicting Jeremy Lin. I'm not saying that because people did. The delivery guy, it's a great story. What no one predicted was he could come in and start and score 38 against. No one can predict that. That's the heights. So, and if we knew those heights, that's someone you hang on to, obviously.
On my podcast, Chuck Klosterman presented a theory that part of the reason people love Tim Tebow and Jeremy Lin and love these stories was because sports was shifting toward this place that statistically we had to prove everything, and everything had to, it was almost like things just couldn't happen that didn't make sense anymore. And that's one of the reasons people love Tebow and Lin. Do you believe that?
Well, I think it's one of the great stories. I see it more as an underdog story.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it's and now I think Yao Ming's made some great comments just about how this will open up. In China in the past, it's always been big guys were identified because there weren't a lot of playgrounds, and so you're tall, you get into a special program. And now I think around always it was that Tracy McGrady was more popular in China than Yao Ming. People could aspire to be more Tracy McGrady, even though that's crazy too if you think about it, than Yao Ming. Because, it's hard to envision I could someday be 7'6" tall, right? But you can envision I might be the guy who's tall or quick enough like Jeremy Lin or some of these wings. So
when you come here, are you amazed by how many people just look at you with stars in their eyes because they want to be the next you? It's
I wish it was
weird.
more women, actually. Yeah.
It seems like it's all dudes.
I would say, it's great. I was that person one time. I was the guy who I was at Stats Inc. After that, I tried to get a job in sports, and I couldn't. And so for the folks out there, it really is nearly darn impossible. You yourself have humble beginnings of writing a website that only 2 people went to.
Yeah.
And I started trying to get a job with a team, left for 10 years. I got so frustrated, and finally got my own opportunity with Whit Grausbeck and Steve Pagliuca, who really gave me that first opportunity.
At this point, so where does it go in terms of the hiring of teams? Because it seems like every team now either has stats research, at least like 1 or 2 guys, or has a whole department. If you don't have that in your professional sports team, I almost think like you're doing a bad job. Like, isn't that fair to say?
Well, I think in our sport it's yet to be written. I think in baseball, for sure the results, and we've had, the Rays are an amazing example. Obviously, the Red Sox, teams like that. Obviously, the A's originally profiled. I think it's been proven there that, and it's such a scientific game, that this is something if you don't have, you're missing out on. I think in basketball, the story's yet to be written. We're obviously investing the most, and we think it'll get us a return, and we think there are results, and that when we lose our superstars, we've been able to maintain a playoff caliber team. But I do think the story's yet to be written on, how important this will be in basketball.
But if I owned another NBA team and I looked at the Rockets, and like Carl Landry, you got him 12 picks later than he should have gone. Scola, you swooped in, you stole him. Chandler Parsons this year.
Chase Budinger.
Chuck Hayes.
You
keep finding these random dudes at points in the draft or in free agency that people, when at that point it's a crapshoot. So if let's say I own whoever, I would be like, dude, we're going to copy those guys. Here's an extra $3 million that I want you to spend per year on this because I want to figure this out. It just seems like that's where eventually everybody is just going to be doing what you're doing. And now you have to think of a new advantage.
Yeah, and we're absolutely working on that. I had a Harvard Business School post on that recently, just how we're trying to use data for our advantage. But we've had success finding those guys in the draft, absolutely. And I think part of it's because we actually don't know. We don't know who's going to pan out. What we do know is we do know how to shift our odds and bring in a lot of very high potential players. And we bring them in continually. And sometimes they pan out, Chandler Parsons. Sometimes they hit bumps in the road, like we traded for Terrence Williams, and he may thrive somewhere else later.
Yeah.
But we saw him as a high potential guy. We saw Chandler, we saw Chase, Marcus Morris. I think is going to emerge for us. So we bring in a lot of high potential guys. Von Wafer had huge minutes for us that year. We made this almost beat the Lakers. So we find those guys, but the reality is we don't know which one is going to pan out necessarily. And when you bring a lot of them in, you're also going to waive a few every once in a while.
Right.
The answer isn't to go fill the end of your bench with, former Knicks cast-offs and things like that.
Right.
Like guys who don't have upside would
old
be.
Guys.
Yeah, we bring in high potential young guys continuously, and it does put a lot of stress on our coaching staff. I'll say that, which is why.
Everyone
Mikhail, I'm so excited by the job he's done and working with him. because I always tell him we're adding a degree of difficulty. If you have the end of the bench with a bunch of guys who know their role and fill in, that's easier for the coach, and actually makes a lot of sense if you're right on the cusp of being a title team. And I think a lot of teams like the Spurs and the Bulls are doing it now. It makes sense. But our team, where we're still trying to turn that corner and be a championship contender, you got to bring in young guys, and they're all going to want to play, and they're all going to want to appropriately want to play. They're all going to put pressure on the coach. They're not going to know exactly how to play defense right away. And it really adds a whole degree of difficulty to coaching that I don't think people appreciate. That's why Mikhail, I've been really excited by working with him.
It was a good hire. I was in your corner with that one.
You were.
Not many were in the corner.
People thought you were biased for the Celtics, but you actually
I'm never
knew
biased.
that he would be a good
criticized
coach.
you when you did things I disagreed with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Moneyball is about inefficiencies. People have mistakenly over the years thought that it was about other things, but it was really about a guy who tried to figure out the inefficiencies in the market, and that was the best way he did. In the NBA, it seems like you figured out the inefficiencies to some degree. Then Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Dallas, all of them were trying to figure out at the same time. You don't have to say what the inefficiencies are now, because I don't want you to spill secrets, but do you feel like they're still out there? At some point, do you just tap out?
They're definitely shifting, and I think one way to see the shift, the only hindsight, is you look at our roster, and you can tell where we see the inefficiencies coming from. So if someone studies our roster, they'll see who we think the league is missing in the draft or free agency or trade, and I think that's really
It bugs you that I know all your secrets now, because I always text you when you do stuff.
Yeah, I have to dodge and
or there's guys out there. I'm like, I know you like this guy.
Yeah,
like,
I think
how do you know that?
One of the things that would help us, frankly, is the NBA rewards losing more than any sport by a huge margin, and that's why the degree of difficulty. What we're trying to do, go from a foundation of 2 All-Stars, Yao and Tracy, and then turn that ship around to again being a contender without going through the bottoming out. It is possible. We can do it, but the league rewards being terrible so much. Like, one of the teams that's really awful this year is going to get. I'm just remembering. I'm trying not to get fined this podcast, so I can't say the name of the top. But there's a top player in college who is going to transform a franchise this year. Yeah. And when he does, they'll probably have a better foundational piece.
We've talked about this in the podcast before. You don't want to be in the middle. You want to be either in the top 5 playoff team, or you want to go the other way and rebuild. And I think even what you're seeing with Minnesota this year. This was 5 years of losing, foundation. And now they have Kevin Love, Derek Williams, and Ricky Rubio. But their fans suffered for 5 years because of it. Was it worth it? I don't know.
Right, and that's why. So we've added, I'm adding a degree of difficulty to our coach. We're adding a degree of difficulty to our turnaround. I do think it can be done.
But you look at this season. Anybody could win either. Maybe the East is going to be tougher, but in the West, it does feel like whoever gets hot for 6 weeks is going to get to the finals, and it's going to be like baseball.
It's wide open. That's why, as we're coming into this trade deadline, we're keeping our eyes open in terms of what's the best opportunity. It could be really upgrading the team this year. It could be it could be trying to set ourselves up in the future. It could be we're playing really well and we don't do a whole lot. That would be rare for us, but it could be that.
Do you want my vote?
Bill, you're going to give it anyway.
I think you should make a run at the West. I think it's open. There's not a single team in the West that I think I look at and I go, yeah, that's the team. Like, it's just the team doesn't exist.
And as you know, we're comfortable doing that. We traded for Ron Artest in his last year, and he was tremendous for us. Even that year we lost Yao and Tracy. Right. And it was really Ron and Shane and those guys carrying us.
You read the Artest Melee oral history we did?
I did.
Ron was in a different frame of mind, I think, back then. You got him in Houston. He was on meds at that point. I think he was in better shape.
He honestly, I only judge people I know him. He was tremendous for us in Houston. Great teammate, played hard, had no issues. So he was awesome for us.
What's your last question? What's your best Mikhail story so far?
He's
a man of many stories.
I know. Like the first 5, I can't say.
Well, there you go.
I would say, I think what I've learned about Mikhail is he's obviously one of the most talented people to ever play basketball.
Yes.
But he added to that an unbelievable work ethic, which which I had no idea. We got a sense in interviews and through talking on background and reference, but I had no idea how much he put into improving his game and his career.
I could have told you that. All you had to do was ask me.
Yeah.
He was 2 hours every practice afterwards, like working on low post moves.
I think there's a difference. Seeing it firsthand is amazing. I think that's.
Does he work with the guys?
Yeah, and he's instilling that culture in our franchise, which I think is something we were really excited about.
Is he working on the drop steps? That was his thing. He had 13 moves,
the Scola challenges him for moves. So,
really?
Oh, yeah.
There's no way Scola holds up to McHale.
I think.
Tell McHale to school Scola. Even 2 broken ankles at age 50 or whatever.
Can you believe that? That he played on a broken foot a whole. Nowadays, they'd catch that stress fracture and they'd be like, "You're out," and he would have been gone for.
What's crazy is he'd do it again. He's like, when you go for a title, you go for a title, and that's it. But I do think that had he not done that, I really do think he could have played till he was 45, because he had those moves, and it's just he was that guy in the pickup game that just had the moves, and that was it.
Yeah,
couldn't stop him.
I wasn't trying to say Scola has as many. He's the closest, I think, in the NBA in terms of having multiple post moves. And
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I would put Scola there.
It's a
I think
Gasol's
Gasol's in there. Yeah, that's really it. Because most big guys now, they want to shoot 12-footers or jump hooks. And they all have the jump hook move with sticking the...
Scola's trying to bring back the slippery yield, that shoot under the guy's arm as he's trying to block your shot.
You know what I saw JaVale McGee shoot a half old-school hook shot at the Clippers game a couple weeks ago.
JaVale, you never know what's going to happen when you
know.
unwrap JaVale. Yeah,
all right, Daryl Morey, good luck with the Sloan Conference. Very proud to be involved again I think this is my 4th year, might even be my 5th. But I'm interviewing Bill James and Mark Cuban this weekend. A live BS report.
Yeah.
Should be good. The Bill James thing, that's you basically brought Yoda to this conference. I
know.
He needs a personal security guard or something.
For sure.
People are just staring at him like he's like a mountain or a volcano or something.
Having worked with him, many years ago, and my wife is here, actually worked at Stats as well. It's great to see him get the recognition. Obviously, he was sort of an obscure guy and from Lawrence, Kansas, and it's amazing. So
I like that you mated with another Stats Inc. person. Are you going to create one of your kids is going to revolutionize something stat-wise?
We'll see. Yeah, it might be your industry now, the media industry. We'll see.
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
So.
I'll keep an eye out for the Morey spawn.
Media movie something. You never know.
Daryl Morey, good luck.
Thanks.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.